in auditions, we have to create singular visions of who these characters are. And it's up to us to direct ourselves. It's up to us to make these decisions about how these lines go. We live and die by it, of course. But when we get on set, and this is where the real money is, baby, we get to collaborate.
Get ready for a wonderful episode as we have a great conversation with Netflix's Sweet Magnolias, Hunter Burke, and we dive into the concept of why you may want too much going on in your life when auditions come your way. Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. Hey everyone, welcome back, or if this is your first time, welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. Get ready for an incredible episode. But before we dive in, I have to give a special shout out to somebody that left us a 5-star review. It is Rachel F. Baby with 3 Ys. I think important to note that. Rachel said, "It's great to hear industry professionals share their insight and stories from working in entertainment. Every guest so far has had a lot of golden nuggets. It's wonderful to hear the Southeast region lifting one another up. We definitely will be listening more and looking forward to future episodes." And here is your next episode coming at you with a good friend, super talented actor. If you haven't looked him up already, be sure to do so. Mr. Hunter Burke. What's up, dude?
Hey, Jesse. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Dude, so great to have you here, man. And I mean, we've been catching up over the last, I feel like you've already been here an hour. We should have just behind BTS, behind the scenes, the whole thing. We just had a podcast before we started the podcast.
That's right. That's right. I like to thank you for warming me up too. I feel like that's part of the method, right?
Totally. It is.
Genius, man.
So I met you, man, and you probably don't know this, but I met you when I was traveling down to New Orleans a lot. And I remember like at that point, I was like legitimately trying to get like any part of my career going because I booked a couple of things and I went on this nutso drought and you were like just killing it. And I remember being like, man, I got to be like this guy, Hunter.
I was a big fish in a small pond. That's
Dude,
all it was.
You were crushing it down there. And so talk about your time in New Orleans, but then what prompted you to finally move up here to Atlanta and all that?
Right. So Louisiana, when I was just going into college, instituted a tax incentive program that was really beneficial, not unlike Georgia, had already had in place for many years. And so while in college, I was like, I should probably start trying to get some traction here before I moved to Los Angeles, because of course, that's what everybody does. And ended up catching a couple of roles during college, right out of college. And I was like, maybe New Orleans is the place to be. And it was great because I was only a 2.5-hour drive from my parents. If they ever needed anything, I could kind of be there. My dad at the time was going through cancer treatment. So I was like, you know what, this makes sense. This could be where I start, where I eventually, kind of hit the ground running. And, it was great for a while. There was opportunities to grow with the industry there. The casting directors were looking for new faces. And so they were scouting all over Louisiana. And, I happened to be the beneficiary of a lot of roles due to, again, big fish, small pond. And so I was in the right place at the right time to, get some traction with a lot of those early days. And then when I met you, I remember this because the Atlanta market began to, I guess, materialize in front of me. It was like the Wild West. Nobody talked about it in New Orleans because I think everybody was just trying to figure out New Orleans at the time. And we'd heard whispers that, Atlanta, North Carolina, they have their own thing going. And so getting with an agency at the time that was in Atlanta with People Store and Alex White at the time, we began to meet a lot of people from Atlanta, and you being one of them, and just seeing you guys' hustle and like determination. I mean, you took the megabus, right? Like
Bro, yeah.
So many times, and that inspired so many of us to do the same thing because I think we saw these guys are willing to go very far to get the role, to get the job, that you have to be able to compete with that. Mm. And so whether you know it or not, you laid a foundation for a lot of actors in the Southeast that was, work as hard as you can, be available when you can. And, within reason, take the megabus overnight to get to where you need to go. And so that kind of broadened the horizons. It was like, oh, this isn't only New Orleans as an industry, it's the Southeast. And so then, we started to get the wisdom from you guys. You were nice enough to communicate it with us in Louisiana. And I think, at the time, New Orleans was really great. There's no better place to be at the time. But it had worn out its welcome for me. And actually, around that time, I was like, I'm going to go to Los Angeles. And so I went to Los Angeles for like 2.5 years, and that was wonderful and a great experience. Not unlike you went to New York, right?
If you're an actor, you're going to want to hear this. We have our 3-day in-person conference coming up. And if you want to see Atlanta for what it really is, the heart and soul of the Southeast actor market, then you're not going to want to miss this incredible opportunity to be in person and really build your actor community. Just imagine being able to hear exactly what you need to hear to be motivated and inspired and really build that action game plan, if you will, to build the acting career that you really want. And most importantly, if you put the work in, deserve. But I want you to imagine being able to really feel being around an incredible community, the top industry pros, so you feel like this is what you're truly meant to be doing. And so everyone, this is all going to be happening at our 3-day in-person conference. I'm not going to take too much time from the podcast, so you can head to the comments in the description right now to get more information. And I even left a discount for you. So go check that out now, and I hope to see you at the conference in June.
I went to New York pretty quick. I went right from school, and then from school I was there, but I didn't have any business savvy at that time. The conservatory didn't give me any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was essentially just up there kind of spinning my wheels, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, I didn't know how to get a career started. So I ended up going back home to Florida, and then I was actually going to give up. And
really?
Yeah, I was going to give up, but I ended up I was like, I'll just mail out a couple things. And I got an agent, and then that got me on a ULB set. That was really, really professional.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, I'm rehooked.
That's it.
I'm rehooked. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So wait a second. So you went to LA. I think I knew this, but it kind of slipped my memory. So you went to LA, and now you're here though. So what happened? Why? I feel like I hear this story all the time. So that's why I want to talk about it. But the amount of bro, and your resume is fantastic.
It's all fake. It's all padded. None of that is.
You could have gone out to LA. You were someone that should have gone out to LA and crushed. And I know so many other actors that oh my God, with that demo reel, they're going to go out there and crush. And I mean this very respectfully, but then run back to Atlanta with their tail between their legs because nothing happened.
Right.
And it's what's going on?
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't exactly know. I know what my experience was, going in for a lot of casting directors and reading, and, it was just, again, it was rebuilding that foundation that I had spent the previous 8 years in New Orleans building. So that's slow at first, especially in a saturated market like Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it turned out, while my resume, my demo reel did get me in a lot of doors, I still had to perform and be the unique best version of myself that was going to get cast in some of these bigger roles. And I wasn't there in my life. I don't know. I try to assign meaning to things just because that's the only way I know to understand and look back and reflect. And I think at that time, I just wasn't representing myself in the best way that I could. I hadn't settled into my skin. I was still wanting to be whatever I could to so many different people. I wanted to be every character that I auditioned for. I had vacated so much of myself from the auditions that it became bland work. And I wasn't very happy at the time. I think it's that fine line of you have to go places to be uncomfortable to grow. And I wasn't using this as an opportunity to grow. I had the mindset that I was, the world is against me. This is happening because you're not trying hard enough, because you're not, your metric of success is just not working. And it didn't pan out. And I think it was because of how I thought about the whole experience. It wasn't a growth; it was an endpoint. And so it actually what led me out of there was into a relationship. It was something as simple as breaking up with a long-term partner, and it was all right. Well, I got to go. And at that time, my dad, his cancer had returned, so it was like, all right, maybe this.
But that's many years. By the way, everyone, where's the camera? But that's many years. So that's a huge success from like when you went to New Orleans originally.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I was
no.
just like, oh, that's awesome because
it felt like it was funny too. Whenever I got to Los Angeles, I booked a job back in Louisiana, in New Orleans. Soon I was there. We were there for like a month, and I booked a show called Claws, and it shot in New Orleans. And a wonderful casting director was like, we really like you for this. You have to come back. And I was like, that's great. I'd love to.
Megan Lewis, right?
Megan Lewis.
Yeah, Megan Lewis is
queen.
The best.
She's the best, truly. And so as soon as I got there, I went back and I spent a couple of months in New Orleans, and I would go back and try to get in with industry there, try to get representation. I also didn't have reps out there. So I was trying to go into every agency. My dad was like, at the time, he's like, just show up with your resume and your headshot. I'm like, Dad, I don't think that's kind of how it works. That's
but you know what? I think you should have done what he said.
Right. Yeah. I think I wasn't as certain of myself as I am now. Had I been, I might have shown up and like done this really crazy thing that maybe would have gotten me kicked out of 9 doors, but that 10th one, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a struggle too, was to find reps, because they were like, cool, glad you got credits. You need to do this hustle for a little while. I was like, okay, I understand that. I think everybody's journey is very specific to them, and that's kind of what it was for me. And I wouldn't expect it to be anything otherwise for someone to move out to Los Angeles and have a very different result than I had. That was just my experience. I came back to in Louisiana at the time after the breakup. I still remember this. I was on the ride home. Early flight from Los Angeles to New Orleans. My dad picked me up. I had listened to a podcast.
Hey, here we go.
With Scoot McNairy that day, who's an incredible actor, somebody I really respect. And he was talking about how he auditioned for, I think it was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He was shooting a TV show at the time, and he didn't have a reader. And so he had to memorize the lines that he had, and also memorize the lines of the reader so that he could time everything out to be his own reader, essentially. And I was like, wow, that's really unique. That guy really must want it. And so I get back to Louisiana that same day. The podcast was in my earphones. And we're driving home, and I get an email from Chase and Tara, and it's an audition for Sweet Magnolias. And it was bizarre. I had read for like 2 other roles, and I was like, I don't really want to do this. I just got home. I'm not feeling great. I feel pretty terrible, actually. My dad had just informed me about his cancer diagnosis, too. So I was like, what, this is stupid. And my dad kind of looked over, and he's like, this is what you signed up for, man. You got to keep doing it. And so we got home, and I didn't have a reader because he ran off to cut grass, my dad. And so what I did, and I've never done this since, and I don't think I should.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is about to be in the podcast.
Yeah,
Continue.
The juice. So I was like, I don't have a reader. And this was before like even thought to call someone to be a reader on the other end. And I was like, I'm just going to memorize both lines. And in post, I'm going to add my voice in and pitch it up. And so it took me like 2 hours. And no doubt, it was one of those things that the audition probably was good when it started, got considerably worse as it was going. And then like the David Fincher effects, like on the 100th take, I'd settled into something that was just effortless, right? Because I wasn't even thinking. My mind was all over the place. And so I put it on tape, and I remember it was like due as soon as possible. So I sent it to Alex, and I was like, hey man, hope this is sufficient. Hoping that he couldn't recognize that it was my voice on the other end of the tape. You actors out there, don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't.
Anyway, a couple of weeks later, I heard back that I got a call back for the show. I went, and then I read for the producers and the writers, and I ended up booking the role, which is insane. Don't do that, kids. Don't do that.
So hold on, wait a second though. That was essentially the day that you moved back? That is crazy.
Yeah.
Like it's just like sometimes just wild how like sometimes timing works. And
Right.
like sometimes you just receive signs. You have to like accept them and see them, but
Right.
like that obviously moving back was the right choice.
Right. I mean, who knows? That's just how it went for me. It's one of those things that I've come to understand is that in times of like great upheaval and like bumpiness in life, that's kind of when things that's when your acting magic can kind of come out, or your creative magic, because there is a lot of stress at that time, and it's a lot of feelings just purging themselves from your soul. And I think at that time my head was spinning, and it was just the like fertile terrain I needed to like plant the seed of a performance, and it ended up working out really well. But that doesn't happen every time. That's the thing, because
Right.
I've been in other situations where there's been great upheaval in my life, and I haven't booked the role that I did. But I think like whenever I sense that something big like chaotic is coming, I'm like, okay, this could be a good opportunity to capitalize, and I shouldn't. When I get that audition, or when I get the call to create art, I shouldn't shun it. I should embrace it, because that's kind of where the magic happens for me. And even if I don't, like I said, even if I don't get the role, because I don't oftentimes, it's still an exciting possibility. It's like,
I think that's really cool. I think that's a cool idea. I want to dive into it a little bit more because I'm like, yeah, there's definitely moments in our life, right, where I'm just like, I'm too busy, or I got a lot going on, or I don't care. So much of similar feelings that you
Right.
had that day. So how do you, like, if you didn't have your dad there with you that day to be like, come on, son, this is what you signed up for. You got to do it. And you're like, oh, shit. All right, dad. You maybe wouldn't have done it. So if you didn't have your dad that day, maybe you missed that opportunity. You miss 20 episodes or however many you have on Sweet Magnolias. So if your dad's not there, how...
And if I didn't listen to that podcast about that actor,
Yeah,
Scoot
yeah.
McNairy, talking about taping his other lines, I mean, it's
how do you
weird.
like push, how do you push beyond that to say this might be the exact moment, or this might be the exact opportunity, or you have to, you should be grateful for these feelings of not wanting to do it, right? Like all of this can be used
Right.
for this art right now and benefit you.
Right. And I think it's funny, because I think at that point, the furthest thing from my mind was booking this thing, because I'd been on a run of a lot of auditions and not booking.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just in a place where I didn't want to do it to begin with. But then reconsidering or recontextualizing for myself why I was going to do it made a lot of sense. And at that point, I wanted to do it for the experience. Like I saw all of the reasons it could go wrong, and I was like, this might be interesting. I'll either like completely mess this up, or I'll have a really interesting experience. And it ended up working. And I think ideally I try to approach, every audition, every attempt to create art with that mindset of like, this could be terrible, but that's kind of what this is about, because that's the only way you can yield results from really great creation, right? So I try to reframe the booking thing to not be so precious.
You have to.
You
have to.
Because you'll die by it every time. I've done it so many times.
And how many other stories do you have? Because I know I definitely have like a handful where I'm like, I'm
Okay.
definitely not booking this one. I'm not
Right.
even going to try. And
Yeah.
then you do.
And it's funny too, because the tricky thing is like you kind of become a little too meta. You're like, oh, I'm definitely not booking this one. And you're like, that's not how it works. You
Right.
can't game the system. You have to be honest and vulnerable, and approach the creation as something, as an experience, not as a result. And that's so often what we do. I had another experience where I had a callback and I couldn't get to it because, oh my God, this is so lame. I was at Sundance and it was a callback for a movie I ended up booking called One Night in Miami. And I was at Sundance pitching a project that we were working on. And I got word from casting. And they're like, we want a callback, for this role. And I was like, guys, I'm at Sundance. Like, what can I do? And they said, we're going to get Regina King to call you. And I said, absolutely. Let's do it right now. I'll drop everything. I left the meeting I was in. And I ended up having to tape. Again, I ended up having to tape in this hotel that I was in Sundance with my phone. Terrible lighting. She called me. She gave me the note, which was simple enough.
What was the note?
It needed. she needed clarity of what was at stake for me, for my character in that moment. And it's a guy arguing to get his client on stage because he's about to lose his client's business. Basically, he's like, if you don't do this, you guys are friends, but if you don't do this, you know, you're fired.
You know what's so interesting about that note though is I feel like it's just like the most basic note that always comes out. Is like, raise the stakes.
Right.
Yeah, raise the stakes.
It's true. That's true. And I did it a couple times. I picked like 1 or 2 takes that I was like, this shows it in one way, this shows it in a different way. The producer I was with at the time was the reader. I didn't do it by myself on this one. And he was an awful reader. But he's a wonderful producer though. And so, yeah, I sent it off and I wanted to do that one. I got a phone call with one of the greats.
Yeah. Jeez.
So I was like, all right. But yeah, again, that was a thing that was like, yeah, these opportunities come when you least expect them. And that's like what you want. You want them to be, this is terrible, but you want them to be when you're unstable. You want them to be when you're wrong-footed because you don't think about them.
Dude, that's so good.
I mean, I don't know.
Good.
Maybe.
No, I love it. I love it because I can think of 2 bookings right now, right off the top of my head. 24 Legacy. I was in a castle in Ireland, and I was like, I don't have time for this. And another one, I was on a cruise ship down the Danube River.
I heard that story.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
And I was like, I don't want to do this either.
Right.
But and there are more stories, but like those come to mind immediately, where it's like exactly what you're saying is so true. And so the important point of that, right, is like, so then how do we set ourselves up to be in that state more often? Is like, this just can't mean that much. This just has to be another one of many things that you do in your life as an artist and as an actor.
Amen. You got to go live your life, which forever I was like, I am an actor first. No. I mean, maybe that works for some people, but not for me because it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't putting me in positions to live and then to be interrupted by the business, by the call to create art. I was just always ready. And it's like, that's a little too desperate sometimes. But there is a delineation. You should always be prepared, right? That kind of idea. Like you should study, you should be practiced, you should have the fundamentals. But at the same time, it's just like do the take where you let it go. Yeah. And that's usually the best take.
That's awesome. That's so good, dude.
Yeah. It's wild. I don't know.
So speaking more on Sweet Magnolias, how was that experience for you because you haven't been on a show that long before. No. So was there anything like different that you kind of like learned along the way being on a show that long that that you're going to take with you onto, I guess, like even smaller opportunities? Because you didn't know that was going to be as big as it was, right? Or did you?
I mean, it was a co-star initially.
Jeez. Yeah.
So, and that's great. I mean, that's the gold right there. That should be every, this is so stupid. That should be every actor's goal, is to get that co-star. You guys have talked about this on the podcast before.
Yeah.
Get that co-star. And then you show up and you do your best.
Dude,
work.
That's the beauty of the Southeast. I mean, some people could argue that it's like the bullshit aspect of the Southeast because it's like they knew that was going to be recurring. Why didn't they say it was recurring?
Right.
But if they said it was that large of a role, then maybe you don't get the opportunity.
Exactly. And that's the control thing too, right?
Yeah.
We want to control every idea that comes into our mind and every possibility. But if they're like, this is just one episode co-star, and they didn't tell me that. They were like, this is a co-star. You kind of just prepare in a way that you're like, well, I've got nothing to lose. So I'm going to do all the homework. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can. I'll try not to bother people. But I think intrinsically I have this thing too where I'm just fascinated by the process. I love filmmaking. I always have. So when I show up to set, it's not hard for me to go and look at everybody's jobs and be curious about it all. As long as I'm not preventing them from doing their work. I just love the process. And so when I show up, it's not hard to be involved. And the scene that I had that day was the audition scene, and like I just knew it.
Right.
Those are the ones where you're like, oh, this is a home game. I'm just gonna approach this batter's box and knock this one out the park. I think with the specific Sweet Magnolias job, it was great because it's you're a family in a circus, and you get the luxury of going to work every day with people, and in this specific case, people who were great, actors who were awesome, writers who really genuinely believed like in the creation of what they were doing. It wasn't a job for them. I feel like that's a rare thing that was really nice about Sweet Magnolias is the head writer and every writer from season 1 on, they really cared about, who these people were. And that trickled down to the actors, to the crew. And everybody was on the same wavelength. And it took a lot of pressure off because I think most actors show up to set and they're like, how can I do this? Or how am I of use? And it's like, you're just a piece. And that's helpful. It's less stressful. You're just trying to contribute. And I think luckily the character that I played is one that is contributing. He's always like in service of. So it's right there on the page. I just need to show up and help that actor get to where they need to get. And I think that works for the totality of acting. You never want to go in there and be like, as number 1 on the call sheet, how am I going to do this? You want to service those other actors that are in there. I had the opportunity to view some wonderful actors to, like take leadership roles and run with them. And that, oftentimes that sets examples of how you want to conduct yourselves down the line. Trying to think of what else. It's just
you brought up a really cool point about the pieces, right? And I think I'd love to know, like, through your experience, I feel like you were like so selfless anyway, just in who you are.
That's a lie. God damn it.
You're very selfless in who you are anyway. But I think a lot of actors go on set, and because, if you think about how often we're in the audition room compared to being on set, it's like not even close, right?
You're so right. That is such a good point.
So like when you're on set, you're a little insecure. And so you're like looking for the like, am I doing good? Please tell me I'm doing good, right?
Right.
But the way you just framed it up is just like, hey, you're just there doing service, right? You're just your piece, and understand you're just your piece. And actually, if you hear nothing, even though that feels bad,
Probably
it's
good.
actually perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
But like, do you have anything to add kind of based on that thought, based on like that show, I guess, in particular?
So I'm so glad you brought this up because I think this is a common misconception about the artistic acting process, which is in auditions, we have to create singular visions of who these characters are. And it's up to us to direct ourselves. It's up to us to make these decisions about how these lines go. We live and die by it, of course. But when we get on set, and this is where the real money is, baby, we get to collaborate. And that is what it's all about because we get to bounce ideas. Our bad ideas become someone else's better idea. And so when we have that opportunity, you have to change that mindset of like kind of that creative control. You hold on to it so strong when you're auditioning, but when you get to set, you have to kind of let it go a little bit. You prepare, you do all the stuff you're supposed to do as an actor. But when you show up on set, you show up as an open book, ready to collaborate. And, like you said, sometimes people are like, no, that was perfect. Don't do anything else. And you've done your job. I always, this might be telling on myself, I always really loved getting notes because I was like, I kind of want to do things that are different. And the director's like, no, not that. We just need this. And it's like, okay, great. I'm glad we're on the same wavelength. Good talk. I swear I would bait directors into just doing that because I was like, come on, let's do this. And they're like, we're trying to make our day, dude. Not in that show.
Right.
Past jobs. So I think that is just a really important part of when we show up to do our job. If we're, number 25 on the call sheet or if we're number 1 on the call sheet. It's in service of the big top, the circus. It's a stupid metaphor, but it makes sense because it's like summer camp.
Yeah.
You run away and you contribute to this really big end product, which is, a show at the end of the day. In this case, it's a show. So I think there's a lot to learn about the process. Even as I, age more and more, I'm still surprised that it's still teaching me things.
I think it continually will as long as you're open for it and you're ready for the lesson.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned like pitching a project at Sundance.
Oh yeah.
Was it Lost Bayou or
No,
it was a
something
different
else.
one?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to bring up Lost Bayou for a couple of different reasons. So I'm kind of like interested about the Sundance thing too. But you produced that project,
Co-wrote.
co-wrote.
I mean, I want to take all the credit.
Yeah,
'Cause,
no,
to
that's
hell
good.
with that other writer.
Yeah, what the hell? Who was it? Yeah. So, how did you accomplish all of that?
Right.
I think is what I'll say, because I kind of believe we're moving into a time where we need to be a little more proactive in that area, and you actually have the ability to do it much easier than in the past. So I'm quite inspired by you in doing that. And so it was a while ago that you did it. So I guess how was that experience? Are you lining up something else? Or you're like, I did it once and I'm out? Like,
God, I feel like this could be the entire podcast.
I bet.
No, thank you for setting me as such a low bar for this conversation. This is going to be great. No, okay, so I think it started because, as artists, we just kind of want to grow. I think in acting, in what we do, you have to rely on other people making decisions. Luckily, at the time, I had become friends with a lot of like-minded filmmakers from where I'm from. I found my community of filmmakers, and it started as just like, oh, we all love these movies. We like to do these things. It started doing short films and music videos, and evolved into the idea of like, maybe we should actually do a feature film. It's not the most original idea out there, but it was something that made sense to us at the time, and so we started to. I say we. It's there was like 4 or 5 of us at the time: a director, a writer, a producer, a cinematographer, and an actress. So we kind of all sat down and said, what do we have at our disposal? What's the story we can tell? And so we kind of retrofitted an idea for a movie that way. We knew we wanted to set it in one location, and so we thought naively that a houseboat was going to be the best idea, but it is a real tough task to shoot on water, as so many filmmakers out there already know, and I know now.
You were like, no, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, and it's like boats break, and that's the only way you can shoot on water, right? Is boats, and they don't want to remain healthy. They just want to break. And there's just other logistical things that are tough. And I'm sure I'm well documented about all of those things, but. Really, it's the idea for the film started with just wanting to collaborate, again, back to that, with some friends of ours who shared similar tastes and also could share a similar story. We're all from South Louisiana, so the movie is about some folklore aspects about South Louisiana, set in South Louisiana. So that's an important thing for writers, I think, is to find the story you want to tell and see if you can convince other people around you that it's a story that we should all share, right? And so luckily we were able to do that. And we crowdfunded, we raised money, we found investors. We limited the scope of what the movie was going to be in one location, but still provide like a sensorial and like panoramic view of a place most people have never seen, which is the bayous of South Louisiana. So we kind of built in this spectacle that we knew we needed, because I think that's what helped it stand out, right? We needed to center that. And then we went and shot it. We found enough crazy people who were willing to work for points, essentially, and little to no pay. And for I think principal photography we did was like 13 days in South Louisiana, and then we came back for 2 days later because we had to get in the water. And we shot in February, and the water was freezing, so we were like, oh, we'll shoot in April because the water will be warmer. And I think that weekend there was like a historic cold front moved in, so we had to shoot in the cold anyway. And we started sending it out to post-production labs in hopes of learning how to shop your movie once it's edited, and we ended up getting in one called IFP, which is the Independent Filmmaker Project. It's now called Gotham now, so they rebranded since, but they help first-time filmmakers. They put them through boot camp of post-production, and so for 3 weeks throughout the year, like 1 week piece, we went to New York and, got put through the ringer of here's how to edit, here's how to talk to production companies about buying your movie, here's what a sales agent is, here's an opportunity to pitch to sales agents, production companies to meet with film festival programmers. It was like a speed dating for all of these things. And, we were able to meet a lot of people that way. And they put us in the position to be shown for, I think it was the head programmer of Tribeca. We had a chance to meet with her, and we ended up premiering like a year later there. And it's funny, it felt like a runaway train the entire time that we were doing it, but it was but you do it with people you love, right? That's what you want to do. You want to create art with, again, your friends. And you all have to have an expectation of what that relationship is going to be, because so often the friendship business partners kind of goes south. But luckily, we all communicated that up front about what we expected with money, with payouts, with everything. And so as a result, we had a great experience, and we learned a lot. Ultimately, I think like we thought of this like in the highest like possible outcomes. We were like, oh, it's gonna sell for millions of dollars. It's very few movies do that.
Yeah.
And
did you make your money back?
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually
we did.
Yeah.
It took a little bit, but movies don't want to be made at all. It's like the chaos theory. No,
Right.
There's nothing in the world that says movies want to be made. And so when you start putting those pieces together, they start to fall apart as you're doing it.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And the other side of that is you see a lot of the stuff that kind of it makes you a little jaded, because it's like Hollywood, like most things, it's not a meritocracy. It's not as good as, not everybody who's the best is going to get the job or so you kind of see a little bit of that. And I think for a while, until recently, I kind of took a lot of those, those quote unquote letdowns as a proof that I didn't want to pursue like creating any more films or writing or anything like that. It was, I knew too much. And so every time I would sit down to write, I was like, well, we're never going to be able to do this because this happened last time. And, so what am I even doing at this typewriter? I mean, computer. I don't use a typewriter. That's silly. So like it took me a while to kind of get over what I perceived as like losses during the process of making this movie, which is stupid. But at the time, it like to my logical brain, I was like, this just makes too much sense not to continue to pursue making another one until recently. Yeah. And I just, more recently, I've just, I found the understanding of what I wanted out of the process, which was a true expression of art and something that, it would be okay if I got notes on, but it was something that I can continue to, just believe in. And it took a while to do that. And I think everybody's journey is different, but ultimately it's brought me back kind of into the fold and creation. So we'll see where this goes. But right now it feels optimistic. I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, kind of based on that, I'm like, so you have, based on that experience, like you're like, great, I did it, don't need to do it again, or great, learn some stuff, I'll do this differently, let's begin.
Well, I think the misconception was like, we only have to do it once and then everybody's gonna give us a bunch of money to do it again. That's just not how it works.
Right.
We were so naive.
So you're like, do we want to really start completely over?
And it's just hard,
it would have to be a bit easier, right? You're like,
certain things. I mean, you realize what you need and what you don't.
You'll shoot on land.
Right.
That'll be a start.
Jeez, yes. number 1, land. But yeah, I mean, you do learn things. I think just you think of the process, again, I'll speak for myself. I thought of the process as overwhelming, and it was something that I didn't want to dive back into because I knew what it was going to cost. And also because I was, stupid, and I was like, I shouldn't have to do this again, which like that like self-righteousness, that what are they? Words are escaping me right now, but like just the idea that I didn't have to work for it was so stupid. But
dude,
like,
I
it was
think
something that I believed.
self-righteousness is like that. I think you nailed it, and I think we all end up there at some point along the way, thinking we're like owed something for some reason. I mean, and I think that probably the reason is like we have worked hard somewhere along the lines, but like it doesn't mean you're owed anything.
No, it doesn't. And so as soon as I could understand that, like really understand that in your bones, it started to make more sense about what the process was going to be about. It was less end result oriented. Because for a while after we made the movie, let's say we released it in 2019, we premiered in 2019, and then we released it in 2020. So it's been about 4 years. I was just like, I don't want to do that because the end result was not what I liked, which is stupid. I was looking at all the bad things that came out of it, and I wasn't focusing on the good things, which is like, I had an amazing time making that movie. It was horrible, but I got to hang out with my friends, and I got to go with my buddies to these labs in New York, and we premiered at Tribeca.
Dude, incredible.
Like, it was insane. And like, all I could see was all of the no's I had gotten along the way. And I think, in the last 4 years, I was just like in a place where my dad passed away, and like I just saw everything for like the worst version of it is. And I'm trying to get out of that. I think it's starting to be a lot better, like just because of adjusting your mindset, my mindset. And so I'm intrigued to go back into it because I feel like I've found a reason to do it again. And that reason isn't like a metric of success. It's a metric of like fulfillment. And thanks for coming to my TED Talk,
Get Scene Studios was founded in helping connect actors with industry pros. We bring in the top Southeast agents and casting directors to really help you get seen by the people that matter. And we really focus this on 2 different ways, everyone. In one of our signature in-person classes or workshops called the Get Seen 360, you get to have a self-tape evaluated, then you get to work on the callback, and then you also work on a cold read. You spend 5 hours with an industry pro in the Get Seen 360. And then for our online class, and this signature workshop we have is called the Perfect Submission. And this mimics the Actors Access submission process where you send in a headshot, a self-tape, and a demo reel or clip. And so this is an incredible way to really get feedback on what that submission is looking like. And so everyone, as a thank you for listening, every single month we're going to choose one winner, and you get to choose one of these classes. Any class that you want will be absolutely free, and this will be our way of saying thank you so much. So all you got to do is head to the pinned comment below, put in your name and email, and you will be entered to win. All you got to do is put in your email one time, and you will live there forever, which means if you submit this month, you could win 3 months from now, 4 months from now. So go ahead and head to that pinned comment now, and good luck. I would add, what do you think your dad would tell you to do?
He would have been like, why are you waiting so long? What are you doing? It's that same old thing of like, this is what you signed up for.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think I was so jaded. I was like, I don't forget this, I don't need this. And I do. Come to find out I do need it. Because dare I say I am an artist. It's the stupidest thing. But like I enjoy the exploration of people's lives and storytelling. And it's something that I feel like I'm uniquely suited for. While I'm not like the best or anything like that, I just feel like I have a skill set that is specific to this, like to the creation of art through film and cinema. And what am I going to give up? I'm not going back. I can't go back. What are we going to do? Give up?
We can't go back. We can't go back.
But what we are doing is like living, outside of just being artists too. That's helpful. That's another portion of the journey that I've learned along the way, and it's been helpful. It's everything's not as precious as it once was.
Right, totally. I want to, and I hope it's okay. But I feel like I just now realized this. Now, this will just be like a theme within the podcast. But a few times it's come up that someone has lost a loved one.
Right.
And both times I'm like, oh, I'd love to know what is the thing that you've taken from them that you like will in a sense like live by. And I always give the example of like my grandmother. She all the way up to before she passed, like she was getting ready, getting dressed, ready to go shopping. She was just so strong, and and was just kind of in the thought process of like, you know, what's money for but to spend, and like we got to live life. And she didn't let like her bad knees or her, you know, her breathing or anything, you know, like or her, that fact that she like started not be able to see, couldn't hear, like all of these things that would just like really, I think, rip somebody down to be depressed or sad and be like, there's no reason for me to leave my chair. I'll just watch the TV, you know? And so for me, you know, when I think of my grandmother, I think of like that strength and that like tenaciousness. And so I've asked it so far, everyone that has brought up a death. And so now I'm asking you, and now I feel like I'm going to ask everybody. So it's now it's in stone with your episode.
I decline to answer. No. Thanks, Jesse. No, I think a couple of things. So the first thing is that death is the great uniter. Like everybody, it affects everyone. And in the moment that it happens in a way for you, it can feel so solitary and so singular. But what was so amazing is learning how many people, like truly learning how many people are affected by death. And it's such a bridge to humanity. It's telling people about the experience that I had. Everybody has a unique experience in that way, and it becomes so much less dour when you can share that experience with someone. It takes the pressure off in a way. And then as far as what I learned, I feel like so many of my friends and my family would say that I am very much the living embodiment of my father, whether I want to or not. Like it's ingrained in me. I tell the same stupid jokes he does. I'm the same, like, you know, my personality is the same. I think I'm better looking than my dad, but that's okay. If he were here, he would argue otherwise. So.
Oh, really? I was going to say, I feel like he'd want that for
I know,
you.
it's funny. That joke used to work when he was around to like give the rebuttal, and now he's not. He's like, all right, I can't really tell that joke anymore. No, and he's not unlike yourself, Jesse. He was always looking for the edge to get to work harder, to go, you know, if they say go 9 feet, he was going 11, you know, like he was a hard worker, and he came from a small town in St. Martinville, Louisiana. And, you know, he was infinitely proud of the fact that like my face was being shown on movie screens across the world. He couldn't get over that fact.
I bet.
And so like I think about his journey, and like he was a politician, and he'd stand on the street corner and hand out, you know, those leaflets, you know, hey, Neil Burke running for insurance commissioner, love your vote, you know, and it took a lot of guts to do that. And again, it's, in that way, you guys are very similar. I think that's one of the things that has attracted me to you, is your tenacity. And so I try to remember that. And looking across from the desk here, it's like, you know, being with that portion of him. So it's nice.
And I think the relationships that we have within the industry, within our lives, are like so important, you know? And so I want to actually circle back to, you said you were kind of at like a really like negative place in your career with like when you were in LA, and you're like, what got me out of it was like a breakup, right?
Right. Yeah.
How do you juggle those relationships in your life and the business? I think sometimes people it can be challenging in a way.
Absolutely.
To do that balance act. So what have you found? What have you learned along the way?
Well, I think, like, you know, just with any relationship in your life that's not your family, you choose to let somebody into your life because they fulfill some part in you and you fulfill some part in them. So connecting, allowing yourself to be a part of a partnership, to be upfront, to be responsible, to being wide open to what people have to offer. It's like, that's always step one. And like with any relationship, you want to be sure that the people you have in your life are the people that are right for you, that connect with you, that understand the kind of the business, kind of your trials and tribulations, all that stuff. So honesty, communication. With acting specifically, it's a strange thing because, like, pragmatically, it's tough when two actors get together, especially if one of them is not working or both of them are not working or one of them isn't a star, because at the end of the day, you have to make a living, right? And so it can cause a rift if both of you are not working, and there's just no opportunity for starting a family if you're just not pursuing life outside of acting, right? I think the thing that was helpful for me was just trying to find somebody that I could share my life with, regardless of if I was an actor or an artist. And that's kind of like foundational, relationship 101 of letting people in fully so that they can kind of see the whole picture early on. And so then you kind of process of elimination, who can be a partner in this very strange journey, who's going to have the understanding. And that's a tricky thing, because acting is such a weird experience for people, because it's a business full of rejection and it's full of doubt, and that's not always a great partnership to be in. So it's tricky. I don't know. I think you just got to find the person you connect with, completely unrelated to acting, and then you start to allow them into a world that you prepare them for, which is to say, a lot of rejection, a lot of tumult, a lot of crazy things. But yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm constantly learning every day about what it takes to be a responsible partner in a relationship, and a friend, and a son, a brother. That's always,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like it has nothing to even do with the business at that point, right?
Right.
It's like, it's just like all those different titles that you hold.
Yeah.
How can we be the best version of that within ourselves, and how can we continue to improve it?
Yeah. It feels oversimplifying of the idea of like being in a relationship, but that's like, it doesn't matter if you're an actor at that point. You can be anything. You just have to, if you're going to commit to being in a relationship, you have to understand, and they have to understand the situation of who you are, what you love, why you love it. And if it works out, it works out. If not, being comfortable in yourself is kind of the most important thing too. Because what's that old adage? You can't fill from an empty cup.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You got to make sure your cup is full.
Exactly.
Jeez.
And that's doing the stuff outside of acting. You want to do both.
Right. Yeah.
Hunter, I feel like we could continue this conversation for such a long time.
Oh, man.
But this brings us to our spotlight sign-off, I think.
Oh, great.
So the spotlight sign-off is 5 questions to end strong. Question number 1 is, what is something you're super grateful for today?
So I'm grateful for this opportunity, Jesse, because if nothing else, it has brought us together, and kind of reconnected with a friend that I hadn't talked to in a very long time. So I'm going to say that, but the other side of that, having a car. I know that sounds bizarre. But after not having a car for a little while, you lived in New York. Did you have a car in New York?
There was a time I didn't, but then I moved to Jersey, and then I did get a car. So then I had a car, which actually, then you're just paying double. You're paying for all the car shit, and then also all the train passes. Yeah. But yes, I did not have a car for a little bit.
There's an independence that comes with having a car. You can go anywhere you want to. You can literally, traverse the United States in a car and see and experience life. And a couple of years ago, I was able to do that. And that was just such an incredible opportunity. And I was allowed that because I had the ownership of a car. And it was something that just so simple. I mean, they wrote a song, Fast Car, that song about that Tracy Chapman wrote all those years ago.
You know what? I got to be honest with you. I don't really hear the words to songs. I'm that guy.
It's totally fine. But it's an incredibly moving song. But it's about having a car to get out of the life that these two characters are in. And it is so powerful. But it's principled on the idea of transportation, leading to liberation.
I mean, I love that. Well, first I'll say I'm also grateful for the podcast bringing us back together, because it has been many years. And when I invited you on, I'm like, oh my God, this will be great. We haven't seen each other in so long. But second, I also love that you brought up car, because I think that's something that people take for granted. And it's unbelievable that we can get anywhere we want, essentially, right? At any given moment. Definitely take that for granted.
Yeah, I love it. There's cars, pro car. I don't know, is that a thing?
Pro car?
Thank big auto. I don't know. Feels like I'm stumping for oil now. Jeez, I'm gonna stop.
All right. Question number 2 is, what is a television show, movie, book, or event that changed the trajectory of your life?
These are good questions. Do you have all these memorized? Or are you reading off of them?
I
have all
I
them
have a
memorized.
teleprompter behind you. No.
All right. This is a good question. I think for the sake of, I feel like something I've been talking about in circles since the whole podcast began is I'm going to choose something outside of the arts that dovetailed into it. So it was the start of my writing partnership. There's a guy named Nick Lavin. I went to high school with him. We were in a terrible high school band together.
What did you play?
I sang.
You sang?
Not well. Not well. But it was fun. We were entertaining.
I bet.
I was not good. They were good. The musicians were. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. He and I, one of our mutual friends was getting married. And so we were chosen as the co-best men. And so we came together to write our toast. And through that process, we ended up realizing that we were pretty good writers together. We had the same sensibilities. We could identify good ideas that made sense to us. We could also communicate to each other when bad ideas were present, which is a very important part. And so through that process, we wrote this toast, and it eventually led to a writing relationship that still goes on to this day. And it's came out of like one of our friends getting married, and it was like, this is the thing that it's supposed to be about. It's about the life, and then everything else falls into the art, which is nice. So
Nice. That's cool.
So Mark getting married, that's the one.
All right. Good job, Mark.
Yeah, Mark.
The third question is, what is something in your morning routine that you cherish?
Oh man, I've heard this one said all the time too, but it's true. Working out.
Working out?
Yeah, I think it's just so many things, but it's I'm a control freak. We were talking about this earlier. Like I need to exert some control on my day in order to feel like I'm not just floating mercilessly. Working out does that for me because I can go in.
What workouts do you do?
It's mainly weight training, occasionally Pilates. I've just started Pilates. And then sometimes yoga, depends. But
Yeah.
cardio, anything. Like give it to me all. Like I want to
Yeah.
experience. I want to be bad at it and like learn to get better at it. But that like it takes your mind off a lot of things. You see a result over time, which is nice, but there is an instant gratification aspect to it that's really nice. Like you being tired, but then getting like the recovery high afterwards. And it is like, I don't know, I need like an oppositional force sometimes to like to get out any anxiety I have. And so the oppositional force in this case is myself. Like I go to the gym and I'm like, I can only do 2 more reps. And it's like, you can probably do 4. Just do 4 more.
How are you able to push yourself in those moments, right?
It doesn't happen often, and I've gotten better about it. But it's like, it's literally just being like, just see where it goes. Just 1 more. It's that thing, and it's so cliche, but it's like, just try 1 more. And you feel so accomplished afterwards. I mean, and that can relate to anything we're talking about with art too.
100%, yeah.
So that's it. I mean, it's a process that, makes you feel better, but also mentally for myself, it's just so helpful.
Nice. Fourth question is, what's something that you are trying to improve in your life right now?
I have so many answers. I have to pick one.
We're here for it.
Yeah. Here's another 30 minutes of answers. Let's see. I think just being present. That's something I always struggle with. Like being in a single moment, not looking back and regretting, not looking forward and worrying, but being in the moment, which is something that's so foundational to acting because that's what it's all about. I'm trying to work on that because I feel like there's a lot of peace that comes with that.
That's so interesting because when you were coming over and Candy was giving me a hard time about you being my man crush.
That's right. Mutual, my man.
I was like, no, I think what's so great about Hunter is that he's just so like present in conversation. And I'm like, and that's why I think I enjoy like being, in conversation or when he's around, because he's just so present with his attention to what's happening. So one, I would say, I think you're better at that than you think you are. You give yourself
I'm sorry,
credit.
I wasn't listening. What'd you say? No.
Or it's because it's important to you and that you're giving it attention that like legit, that's what I said like yesterday.
Right. So there is a component to that, which is other people. I feel like I can be present with other people because I feel like that's fulfilling to me. It's the curiosity that I always am after. Like it's the engagement like with other people and it's scratching the itch of like figuring out who these people are and what their experiences are. It's when I have time to myself, too much time to think and reflect, or when I just, there are people in my life that I spend a lot of time with that I don't give every new person, like I don't give them the same attention. And that's also something that I'm working on is being more intentional with that present mindedness to the where it's not just for new people or people I haven't seen in a long time, but it's for everyone. And it's for myself too, because the gears start going when I don't have somewhere to put my focus, right? So I think it probably more relates to outside of social interaction, because that's like that routine of yourself, that you slide right back into when you're not stimulated by some force outside of yourself. So Thank you for that compliment, though. That's very nice.
You're very welcome. All right, well, last question. So, end strong here, my man. Jeez. We went over a lot of stuff, but if the listeners could just get one piece of advice, either from the podcast or something that we missed, what would it be?
I think it's the idea of impermanence, that is what life is. Just because things are good now, they won't always be good. Just because things are bad now, they won't always be bad. Life is fluid. It changes. There's a great quote by the Japanese writer Murakami, and I won't quote it because I don't know it exactly, but it's something to do with like when you're in the storm, you don't know you're in the storm, and you don't know how long it is, but the only thing you know for sure is that you'll be changed when you come out of it. And that's kind of, I feel like, speaks to the idea of impermanence. It's like, you're in a bad mood right now. It's not going to last forever. You're in a good mood. That's not going to last forever either. I feel like there's a fulfillment that comes with understanding that life is finite and that there are no indicators that are going to lead you to one specific thing. It's so chaotic. The universe is out there just conducting itself however it sees fit. And I think all we can do is exist in the moment that we're in, again, going back to the present and understanding that life is impermanent. I think Tom Hanks said something to that effect, and it always stuck with me because I'm like, no matter where you are in life, it's a good thing to remember. So life is impermanent. And I think you should capitalize on that. It can be bad, but it's also very good.
Yeah, and I love that too, because if you're feeling bad, like you said, know that it's not going to be like that forever. And if it's good, I think that's such a reminder of like, make sure you're in some massive gratitude.
Exactly. And celebrate it. Something as actors, I feel like we don't allow ourselves to do oftentimes because we're like, well, I'm just going to have to audition for something else. Or like, I get this other job. It's like, no, you have to celebrate the things that go right.
Yeah.
Air quotes, go right.
Yeah, I had an old friend many years ago, and we lived together in the bungalow.
Oh yes,
and
let's talk about the bungalow,
dude. We'll be here for another hour.
Let's do it.
But and it was Hakeem, and Hakeem, I remember. Between the house at the bungalow, like someone was always booking usually, right? It was great, and I remember that like I think I booked something. And I just tried to really play it off like, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said something that really stuck with me. And I teach it to people. I tell people all the time. And he's just like, dude, man, we got to celebrate these moments. Like, we work so hard for them. And there's so many of them we don't get. And you don't know when the next one is coming either. Yeah. So, like, we got to take these and celebrate them. And that really stuck with me. And so I just think you're so right.
That idea, though, of community. Like we were talking about earlier, the relationships, the people you have in your life, like that you can share that with and remind you of. I mean, that's the thing. We get to do that and we get to choose those people. That is so significant.
Yep.
Damn, Hakeem. Hope you're well, buddy. That's a really good reminder.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's it.
No.
That's
Let's keep
no.
going. Let's talk about the Braves.
I have bad news. I don't really know much about the Braves.
That's all right. Let's talk about Dolly. Let's get Dolly in there.
Dolly, you're coming in. All right, man. It was so great to have you. Thank
Likewise,
you so
man.
much, man.
Thank
It was
you.
awesome. Everyone, if you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead. This is your moment. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's a really great way that helps the podcast. And then it's going to give you those reminders when a new episode comes your way, so you're not going to want to miss it. Everyone, thanks again for being here. I'm Jesse Malinowski. I'll see you on the next one.